More bad news in a bad news season for the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey and his backup, Jordan Mason, both running backs going to injured reserve, and tragedy hits the Trent Williams family. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there. And thanks to all the new listeners joining us here. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast, and we'll take you through the rest of the season and into the off season and draft season and maybe even the playoffs. We'll talk about some playoff odds today. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel. Get a big return right now on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Kyle Shanahan on a conference call with reporters today, Croc, and it has been confirmed it's a PCL injury for Christian McCaffrey. It's going to be at least 6 weeks for him. He's going on IR, which means if the 49ers aren't in the playoffs, his season is over. And Jordan Mason turned up with an injury as well, Croc. So not only Christian McCaffrey going on IR, it's at least going to be 4 weeks for Jordan Mason, who suffered a high ankle sprain in that game. Both running backs now going to injured reserve, which means I guess it's Isaac Guerendo season. The rookie is going to get a lot more run for the San Francisco 49ers down the stretch.
Peacock, do you remember, it might have been prior to the season, definitely training camp. I was like, you know what, Peacock, the vibes are just off a little bit this year. Just something wasn't sitting quite well with me. It was whether it was the Christian McCaffrey being out, the whole stuff with Brandon Ayuk, and just everything else. I was like, it doesn't seem right. And maybe I'm tripping. This season starts and they have a great game against the New York Jets, or at least at the time it felt like a great game. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe the vibes aren't quite down. But as we approach, kind of the back half of this season, I don't know if this season, from an injury standpoint, a coaching standpoint, we've complained every week about special teams. And now it's like not just Christian McCaffrey's out. It's like, man, Jordan Mason, the guy who has ran very well, he's been battling injuries throughout this season. This is a disastrous season right now.
Ricky Pearsall gets shot to start the season. Like, that was the week before the season started for the San Francisco 49ers. It's unreal what the 49ers have gone through this season. This is that type of a year, and the record shows it right now. Another loss, those losses stacking up. Odds are against the 49ers and with all these players out. And I want to talk a little bit about how many Pro Bowl, all-pro games the 49ers are missing this year. And you got Fred Warner that's gutting through an injury. He left the game. James Cook has a 65-yard touchdown run, and he comes back. We already know he's got a broken bone in his ankle for Fred Warner, and he's still out there playing. I don't know if he even should be right now, the way this season is going for the San Francisco 49ers. So it's just been a disaster, start to finish. Holdouts, injuries, and things that you don't even – pneumonia for Deebo Samuel, right? These are – it's insane what the 49ers are going through this year. This is a cursed season for San Francisco.
It is. And I think a lot of people might, attribute the Super Bowl loss to how things have gone this year with, just some of the vibes being down. And that was tough, right? I remember thinking last season, you have as good of any time to win the Super Bowl. You kind of got to do it now. And I had one of our listeners who lives in, I want to say he lives in Minnesota, or he lives somewhere else. I don't remember exactly the state, but whatever the local team is there, they're like, man, they're just looking for any kind of, positive, vibes or outcome of the season, whether it's, just playoffs and can we get a playoff win, whatever it is. 49ers, you're going to multiple Super Bowls, conference championship games. You've had so many opportunities. And you've kind of squandered them away, but in the moment, because of how talented the roster is, you assume, every year is going to be like this. Every year you're going to be in the mix. And it's not just a 49er fan thing, thinking that it's everybody. Before the season is up, 49ers highest odds to win the Super Bowl, second highest odds, and that's just been the case. So to have a setback like this in a season, where do you go from here if you are Kyle Shanahan? Because you've had so many highs, even just competing. And I've always told people, yeah, you want to win the Super Bowl, but to me, it's not a failure of a season if when you give the fans a reason to root throughout the year, or a reason to be optimistic throughout the season. A lot of high moments, a lot of big wins, and you go to the postseason, you have that. And right now, I don't feel like we're going to get any of that. You're sitting at 5-7. You still got to play the Detroit Lions. I don't even want to know what that game is going to look like right now. I think you and I both do a good job of keeping our emotions out of it, trying to, either remain optimistic or point out areas where they can get better. But at this point right now, the 49ers sitting at 5-7. I feel like, just like everybody else that's listening to the show, what the heck do the 49ers do?
You just have to eat it. You just have to get through it as best you can, and get ready to do it again. And it's so hard to climb the mountain over and over again. And clearly it's taken a toll on the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know how much of it can be attributed to going on long runs in the playoffs for multiple seasons. I think there's a lot of, tread that's been taken off a lot of the tires for the 49ers, better players, but you definitely can't point to everything being a Super Bowl hangover, right? And so clearly some mental and physical toll has been taken from those deep runs and the Super Bowl loss, but definitely not all of it. I think there's a whole major dose of bad luck here too. And all you can do is get through it and start anew, start fresh, and hope everybody shows up in the spring feeling a lot better. Good news with Christian McCaffrey, he's not going to need surgery. So he should be ready to go next year and be 100%. High ankle sprain, that timeline will be fine for Jordan Mason going into next year. Maybe even he has an opportunity to come back at the end of this season. Unlikely there. Some of the veteran players like Trent Williams can rest more. Nick Bosa can rest more. I mean, you got to sit. I know Fred Warner wants to play through it, and he's a warrior. But at this point, 49ers lose another game, you probably got to sit him down, whether he wants to or not, the rest of the year. And you got to start being smart and getting everybody the needed rest and getting them healthy and start fresh again next year. That's getting pretty close to where we're at for the 49ers right now.
I think the big thing for me is, why should people continue to listen to this show, right? Like, why should I continue to listen every day to the 49ers? And there are some bright spots on this team. My buddies and I were in a group text, and we're talking about some of the 49ers young players. And from here on out, if you're not going to hear us talk about the 49ers making a playoff push or even playing in the playoffs, let's talk about some of these young guys and what they're doing. Isaac Guerendo, this is a big opportunity for him. There is no CMC. There is no Jordan Mason. It is going to be your show now, Guerendo. What does that look like, and what improvements do we see from week to week? All those rookies on the defensive side of the ball are young guys. Let's see D. Winters, right? Like, why isn't D. Winters out there? Why is Campbell out there over Winters? Well, I think there may be an opportunity for Winters to get more action now, right? You start looking at guys that are going to help you down the line. Mustafa, looking at Green, Ronaldo Green. What do those guys look like? So if you can't expect anything else on this show, you will get to hear a lot of more in-depth analysis on the guys that are going to be really leading the 49ers for years to come. A lot of great young talent, a lot of really good guys, a lot of guys that are contributing right now, albeit not to wins. But I think you kind of need times like this, some adversity, to learn how you have to prepare week in and week out. And I can't wait to really break down those guys and how they're doing as this season progresses.
Absolutely. It's evaluation time. It's always evaluation time. You're putting stuff on film every single time you go out there in the NFL. Ricky Pearsall. How about this note on Ricky Pearsall? He's got 0 catches on 3 targets in the last 3 weeks. He's run 63 pass routes over the course of the last 3 games, according to Josh Dubow of the Associated Press. 63 routes, 0 catches, and 3 targets on those 63 routes, according to those numbers from Pro Football Focus over the course of the last 3 games. I want to see Ricky Pearsall getting more involved, and you get an opportunity to evaluate some of these players and get these guys ready, game experience going into next year, so they're not young and they're not inexperienced going into year 2.
you know, my thing, and again, anybody's listening to this show, I kind of beat this like a dead horse, but the 49ers don't prioritize getting anyone the ball. And I talked about it all offseason with the Brandon Ayuk thing. How in the world do you have a first-round pick out there and he's not getting targets? And he's running routes. He's ran over 60 routes. So he's running routes. He's out there. He's on the field. And there's no incentive for you to get him the rock, or there's no thought, you know what? Let me dial up touches for this rookie receiver. It's like, nope, just going to run our offense. And it's been like that. And I feel like I'm the only one complaining about it. But now you're going to see it from a guy who you used a first-round pick on.
And it's not like, first of all, yeah, you spent a first-round pick on this guy, and he's playing, and he's on the field. Utilize him. But it's on top of that, it's not like the rest of the guys are lighting the world on fire either. So he might give you a little something, and he's a little bit different than the other guys you have. Might be able to make a play. Use some of that quickness. There's a reason you drafted him in the first round. So absolutely, evaluation time for the San Francisco 49ers. But still playoff chances that we will talk about next. More bad news, though, on the 49ers. The Trent Williams family loss. And the hits keep coming for the San Francisco 49ers in what is really turning out to be a bummer of a year, even though there's a lot of ways that we can spin this positive as well on future episodes, which we will try to do, therapy pods and all that. And of course, we're going to start looking at draft season's going to pop up. The 49ers lose a couple more games as well. But let's get into the rest of it and how many games Pro Bowlers and All Pros have missed so far this year. How many will they miss this year for the San Francisco 49ers? To really put it into perspective next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. It's the best place to get in on real money sports action. Join over 10 million members and $50 billion in awarded winnings with Prize Picks. They've made daily fantasy accessible to all. All you do is you pick more or less on at least two players, and you're playing against not those other 10 million members, but just against the projections on Prize Picks. More or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks, and some weekly specials as well. Prize Picks has weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Croc. A few more injury notes from Kyle Shanahan's conference call with reporters. So Christian McCaffrey, IR, Mason, IR. Neither looks like they're going to need surgery at this point. Kevin Givens will need surgery. He has a torn pec, and he's going to be placed on injured reserve. He's going to be done for the year as well. Good news on Talanoa Hufanga. It's expected that he's going to be coming back from his wrist injury, at least to practice this week, and his practice window will open. Dre Greenlaw is getting closer and closer to making his way back as well. Should the 49ers even allow him to come back at this point? Maybe just get a few snaps and kind of get a little under his Achilles and see how that's going potentially for Dre Greenlaw the rest of the year. And let's see, I think there was another note on Bosa and Trent Williams and some of those guys. It just kind of they're in the same zone they were, and they'll be reevaluated as the weeks go on, and we'll see who's ready to go from that standpoint. But speaking of Trent Williams, actually, hold on. Before we get to Trent Williams and that story, this from Eric Branch. In 2023, the San Francisco 49ers had 10 players who earned All-Pro and or Pro Bowl honors on the season last year. So those players, those 10 guys, have combined to miss. They did combine to miss just 6 games due to injury last year. This season, those same 10 players that were all pros and Pro Bowlers have already missed a combined 33 games. And when you add up, even with no more injuries at all, if you add up the total of what Christian McCaffrey will miss, Javon Hargrave and Brandon Ayuk will miss, who are out the rest of the season, that number is going to be at least 48 games from the 10 All-Pros and Pro Bowlers that the 49ers have It's going to be at least 48 games, and who knows, over 50, depending on how many other injuries there might be, or if they decide to shut down Fred Warner or anything like that, and how many more games guys like Williams and Bosa miss. So, I mean, you're missing 50 games from Pro Bowlers, all pro players this season, and that's just always going to be a tough thing to overcome.
Yeah, and again, you the first number you started off with was 6. Last year, the 49ers were very healthy, and again, talk about the playoff runs and how they're able to do that. One thing they had working for them, man, this team is super healthy. They were going into the playoffs. You got all your guys, and when you have injuries like this, we can talk about Kyle Shanahan and the job he's doing as a coach this season, but you can't overlook how banged up the 49ers are. Now, everybody deals with injuries, but when you're dealing with injuries to this extent to the guys, right? The Pro Bowlers are all pros. It's tough to win ball games like that because the X's and O's, sure, but every coach will tell you it's about the Jimmies and Joes. You gotta have the guys for it to, be able to get the outcome that you're looking for. And right now, the 49ers, every time you turn around, I mean, to see Christian McCaffrey lead the field, and then they had that kind of bird's eye view of Fred Warner walking through the locker room and knowing already guys who aren't out there, it's a tough sight for the 49ers. So, yeah, that's a staggering amount of losses as far as the players go that the 49ers are missing out on. That's tough.
And my guy, Antonio Kruger on Twitter, reminded me that it's that you have to remember that the Vikings game, the Rams game, Cards, Seahawks, a lot of those losses earlier on in the season were not necessarily about injuries either. There was no Christian McCaffrey at the early part of the year, but the Niners were relatively healthy to start the year, especially once Brandon Ayuk was back. And there was a lot of other reasons that they lost those games. And if they would have won some of those games, they'd be in a position where they could have overcome some of these and they could potentially be rallying into the playoffs still at this point. But you lose those games even when you are more healthy. And then you're supposed to come back from that with all these injuries and everything you're dealing with. It just makes it nearly impossible from where the 49ers are right now after 13 weeks. Trent Williams. This is another heartbreaking story. Trent Williams and his wife, Sandra Williams, were expecting twins. And apparently one of the twins passed away earlier in their pregnancy. And then this is something that happened a week or two ago on November 24th. And there was a post from Sandra Williams about their son, Trenton O'Brien Williams Jr. She said, quote, "I prayed and hoped that your diagnosis of trisomy 13 wasn't true and wouldn't be the fate of my long-awaited beautiful sunshine, my firstborn and only son. I've always wanted you, but God wanted you and needed you more." That was Sandra Williams' message about their son. And so they lost both of their twins that they were expecting. And just really a sad story. Charvarius Ward lost his 2-year-old daughter and to a heart condition. I don't know what trisomy 13 really is. It's a genetic condition. But man, it's everything that's happening to the San Francisco 49ers right now. And your heart really goes out to the Charvarius Ward family. And we've talked about that here on the podcast and the Williams family as well. It's everything right now with the San Francisco 49ers. So, big prayers and thoughts up to the Williams family and what they're dealing with off the field on top of everything else the 49ers are doing on the field that they're dealing with and all the injuries.
I can't even imagine, what they're going through. But right before we got on this show, I was outdoors, putting my daughter through a workout. And she's running around the block. She's doing lunges. She's doing, squats with the weights and everything, my 8-year-old daughter. And I find so much joy in being able to have that quality time with her. Went to the movies yesterday, and the course of life, I'm supposed to go before my kids go. So to hear these things that are happening with some of these 49ers players and they're losing their children, I can't even fathom what they're going through. And, that's just tough. That's tough. My heart goes out to the Williams family, the Ward family. I can only imagine how difficult of a time it is right now.
Yeah, you should never have to go through that. You should never have to bury your children. And Kyle Shanahan kind of sounded like he was a little choked up talking about it on the conference call with reporters. And it's just Yeah, it's unfathomable. So thoughts go out to the Williams family, the Ward family. Niners dealing with a lot right now in what's seemingly a lost season, and hopefully they can come out of it. And look, it's going to make them stronger when they do. And that's kind of the thing. You get ready, get your mind right, get your bodies right for next year. If this ends up getting shut down pretty soon here, and I think they're getting pretty close to it. And we're going to be on rookie watch, and we're going to be in evaluation mode. I think they're pretty soon here, especially if you start losing to teams like the Bears, and you got to win against the Rams, and you got to win in Week 18 against the Arizona Cardinals. And even if the 49ers lose one more, like say the Detroit Lions, Niners have the Lions, who are the best team in the league right now on the schedule. If they lose that game, they could still win the rest, have a couple more NFC West wins, and potentially even earn with some help a tiebreaker and get in at 9-8. Maybe it only takes 9-8 with the way these teams are playing right now in the NFC. So the playoff odds, Croc, we'll get into those next. And I have one more note from Kyle Shanahan's conference call about defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen, who a lot of fans are calling for his job. We'll get to that next. The next segment of this episode of Lockdown 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You're ready to tackle all the NFL action right now on FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You want to place live bets on the NBA? You can do that too. NHL, yep. Combat sports, motorsports, you name it, you can find it on FanDuel. And when you get a hunch in the middle of a game and you want to check out the latest stats and scores and live play-by-play, you can find all of that on the same site, FanDuel.com, that you're placing your bets and maybe get informed of the next bets you want to place. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you place and win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And Croc, looking at the odds from our friends at FanDuel.com for the NFC West division, Niners in last place in the division and have the longest odds to win the division. So if you think the 49ers have some magic up their sleeves, 14-1 odds right now, the San Francisco 49ers behind the Seahawks, behind the Cardinals, behind the Rams even, to get in and win the NFC West. It is not impossible, Croc, but the Niners have to leapfrog a lot of teams and have to do a lot of winning. And it starts to get pretty simple here with maybe you could lose one more, but if the 49ers win out, and look, you should be able to beat the Bears. We've seen them not be able to close the door, and I don't think even banged up, the 49ers are that much worse than the Los Angeles Rams, even though their record is worse right now. I don't think the 49ers are that much or at all worse in Week 18. Maybe the 49ers are back and a little stronger, and Garendo looks good, and Bosa's back, and Williams is back on the field in Week 18. 49ers can go beat the Arizona Cardinals, right? So with that said, it's not impossible right now. It's just pretty unlikely that the San Francisco 49ers, because you look at the Niners, and I mean, they're tied with the Dallas Cowboys. Now they have the head-to-head tiebreaker on the Cowboys, but remember how bad the Cowboys were and how bad they were playing? They've won a couple of games. The Cowboys have the same sticking record as the San Francisco 49ers, right? And a couple of weeks ago, we're pointing and laughing at the Dallas Cowboys and how bad they were. And I know you were letting your brother have it in your family chat, right, Croc, about how bad the Dallas Cowboys were. And he's probably saying something like, hey, they got the same record as the San Francisco 49ers now. So that's where the Niners are at. They're as bad as the Dallas Cowboys.
I think leading up to the Packers game, you put a chart up and it kind of showed where the 49ers were and their chances of making the playoffs. And it's like, hey, if they win this game, then their chances of making the playoffs increase so much. But if they lose it, then it goes the other way. And before the Packers game, if they were to lose that game, the 49ers had a 15% chance to make the playoffs, right? So what are those percentages after you not only lose to the Packers, but then you turn around and lose to Buffalo?
Yeah, I haven't seen those percentages. It's probably not that much worse. A Seahawks win doesn't help, but the Cardinals lost. So, and you're only one game behind where the Rams and the Cardinals are at 6-6 right now. You're 2 games behind, 7-5. Niners are 5-7 behind the Seattle Seahawks. But you split with the Seahawks. So division records, if And I don't know. So the Niners could go basically 500 in the division, right? The Cards and Seahawks split already. We'll have to do some of that more. We'll do some of that math and just look at least the tiebreakers in the NFC West right now, because actually I have it right now. Hold on. Division record. Yes. So the Seahawks are 2-2. So the Seahawks are 500 right now in the division. If they split the rest of the way or go a game under 500 and lose out in the division, then the San Francisco 49ers, if they win out and beat the Rams and the Cardinals, would have that division tiebreaker over the Seattle Seahawks if they were both finishing at 9-8. The Seahawks would have to go 2-3 the rest of the way for that to happen, for them to be at 9-8, because they're at 7-5 right now. The Cards and the Los Angeles Rams, who are both 6-6, they are 2-1 each in the division. But obviously, if they lose to the 49ers, then they would be each 2-2 in the division, and then it would be the remaining games, which means you're probably rooting for them to all beat up on each other. You're rooting for, I don't know which games they've played, unfortunately. I just know that. So the Rams lost to the Cardinals. I know that. So that is the Rams' one division loss so far is against the Cardinals. But they still have to play 2 more division games. Or 3 more division games, actually. Or no, 2 more, 3 more. I don't know. Anyway, we'll have to do some more of that math later on. But depending on how these teams do in their non-division games, if the 49ers are tied and they win out, they do have a chance, even if they lose one more game at 9-8. But you start to need a lot of help there. Let's put it that way. That's where the 49ers. The Niners are going to need some help, and they're going to have to win a whole bunch of games, and at most, lose one more game. And so if they lose any of the games to the division, lose any of the games before the Lions game, you're going to be in bad shape, unless they go knock off the Lions. And right now, I can't project that the 49ers would do that. But they could win the rest of the games. They could win the rest of the games, even as banged up as they are.
49er fans, what I suggest to you is kind of listen to what I said earlier and find the silver lining in the young guys and listen to the podcast to figure out what they're doing. Because those odds that Peacock is speaking on about the 49ers potentially going to the playoffs, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I don't want to be the dark cloud on your morning drive right now. But I feel like they need more than a lot of help. You know, they need Jesus.
Divine intervention.
They need something. But for y'all, hey man,
Well, look,
how's Croc, how's Renardo doing? Renardo Green. What's it look like? Oh man, I'm gonna break down plays and everything. You will get in-depth analysis because we're gonna need it over these this last quarter of the season for sure.
The NFL has a way of flipping things on its ear, and you think you know how things are going to go. It's so chaotic, and we'll see if the 49ers got some tricks up their sleeves for us. But yeah, and that's the thing. So we're talking about evaluation mode. If Isaac Garendo goes out there and starts missing blocks, we might see Patrick Taylor real quick. Ricky Pearsall has 0 catches in the last 3 games. So that stuff, I'm talking to you, Kyle Shanahan. You better make sure there's something for us to evaluate out there on the offensive side of the ball too, right? And so let's have some fun.
Pearsall is running some good routes. I know he's not getting the ball, 49er fans, but trust me, he is getting open.
Here is Kyle Shanahan's quote, and we'll finish here on defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen. And he was asked what he thinks of Nick Sorensen's performance so far this year. And he said this, quote, "I'm very satisfied with Nick. Some of the mistakes we've made, I don't think that's a schematic issue. That's a fundamental issue. That starts with me." And so he kind of threw himself in front of Nick Sorensen a little bit. I think some 49ers fans would disagree about being satisfied about Nick Sorensen, but I think some 49ers fans would also agree that you got to point to Kyle Shanahan for some of this stuff too, even on the defensive side of the ball. So 49ers fundamental issues, and maybe just maybe you start from scratch a little bit next offseason. Maybe you don't act like you're a Super Bowl team to start 2025. You act like you are day one head coach of a startup franchise, and you got to make sure you're doing the little things right before you start talking about big things, right? And so maybe that's where the San Francisco 49ers are right now. And look, I think Nick Sorensen will probably be better next year than he is this year. But is he the right guy? I think a lot of fans out there are looking at Robert Saleh and be like, yeah, well, we got to have a reunion with Robert Saleh. And I wouldn't really argue with him if one of those known commodities. And look, Nick Sorensen wasn't the 49ers' number one choice. That wasn't Kyle's number one choice to be defensive coordinator. It wasn't the first interview he held for that position. So, yeah, again, it's evaluation mode. It's evaluation mode for Kyle. It's evaluation mode for Nick Sorensen. Evaluation mode for the young players too. And there's still a chance. The Niners aren't mathematically eliminated yet.
This is the first time that Sorensen has done this. And as someone that, is in coaching and understanding how you kind of need everything to go well, it's hard to win football games. It is really hard. I can understand how after a season of this, Sorensen could get better, right? Like I don't. It has not gone well for him so far, but that doesn't mean that there aren't lessons that he's learning as he goes through this process. And you come back next year, maybe you have more innovative thoughts, more ways to utilize guys in a different way. Hey man, I think this year let's start working on in the offseason on this guy lining up here and doing this, and maybe different tweaks to the philosophy, and kind of develop something into your own, because we've talked a lot about it. Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion, is the defensive coordinator. And the guy that has the title of defensive coordinator is just doing whatever Kyle wants him to do. So can you figure out how to do what he wants you to do, but also make it your own? I think that would be the number one job for Nick Sorensen this offseason.
And you get a healed up Fred Warner in 2025. Maybe you bring back Dre Greenlaw. He's been missed on the 49ers defense. Maybe you add a first-round defensive lineman on top of that too, right? Your rookie safety in Malik Mustafa, your rookie corner in Renardo Green. They're seasoned now. They're going into year two and have some experience under their belt. It should be a better unit next year with Nick Sorensen or without. And evaluation mode, though, for sure. There's guys coaching and playing for their football jobs and football futures the rest of the way. They're not going to lay down. And we talk about them packing it in, and that's not the way they're going to do it. That is not the way Kyle Shanahan's wired. It's not the way John Lynch is wired. It's not the way players are wired. And it's going to be interesting the rest of the way, whether 49ers make a run, make it interesting on the scoreboard or not. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I appreciate all the everydayers out there. And, when we do get into draft mode, you let us know which prospects you think fit for the San Francisco 49ers, and we're going to have to start scouting those. And, it's always a big part of the offseason anyway, and you hope the offseason doesn't mathematically start too soon for the San Francisco 49ers. But we got you covered every day, no matter what the stories are that are going on with the 49ers. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.